Drop it.
Hello and welcome to the Be Real Podcast, the Maryland real estate podcast. I'm Michael Becker, and as always, I'm joined by
Brad Cox.
Brad. Great to see you today.
Good to see you, Michael.
How you doing today?
Cold outside, hot in our office.
I'm down to a t-shirt, my friend.
Oh, man.
It is warm in here. You're on the sunny side of a building. I'm wondering if you're going to like it or hate it in summertime.
We're going to see.
I wanted you to ask back to me, though, how I'm doing.
How are you, Michael?
Wonderful. You want to know why? What did we
I
talk
have
about
an idea
last week?
why.
Yeah, you know why.
Yeah, Michael crushed it on the Super Bowl pool.
Yeah, we had predictions at the end of last week's podcast.
We did, which we didn't quite get, although...
Well, we thought the Eagles both thought the Eagles would
did.
win, and we thought the difference would be...
Mahomes' ankle.
And it looked like we might have been...
He's a beast.
Pretty smart when at the end of the first half when he went down
when
and hobbled off.
He was hobbling off, and I thought, oh, crap, this is exactly what we were worried about. And then he came back, and he's a beast.
As you recall, I predicted 37-34 Eagles.
Right. So point-wise, you
Very
were
close.
almost on the money.
Final score was 38-35.
Just
Very
needed
close.
it to be reversed, and we would have been...
Little did I know when I made that prediction that the 4-7 was one of my numbers in the Super Bowl pool.
Uh-huh.
And that did hit. You know, I was in a pool that doesn't do it at the end of every quarter. It's every score change. So if a touchdown scored, and then it's 7, and then the next point it makes it an 8,
right.
Both you guys win. So I won one of them. But the reason I'm doing really wonderful, Brad, is, and I didn't even know it or realize it until the Eagles did that 2-point conversion. I had Eagles 8, Kansas City 5.
And
so did you.
And so did I. Yeah.
Mine
Which was when I first saw that, I was like, that's
There's
useless.
terrible numbers. You're not thinking that's going to win.
Useless, right?
It has to get up high enough for those numbers to hit, right? You have to be 28-35 what you think of.
But to your point, you bet the over. You were smart. You knew it was going to go there.
I had a feeling it was going to be a high-scoring game. That was a pretty easy call when I felt great. I had some money on the over in the first half. Now, betting is legal in Maryland.
It is now.
I'm saying I'm not doing anything.
Right.
You know that app you have? They track it. Like so, if I'm
sure
at the
they do.
beach in Delaware,
yeah,
and I wanted to place a bet on a football game or basketball game,
can't do it in Delaware.
Can't do it, and it tracks where you are.
Wow.
I have to drive down south,
A couple of blocks.
Coastal Highway, and get cross past Fenwick and Ocean City, and then come. No, I wouldn't do that. It's not that big a deal. I just do it to make the games a little bit more interesting. But
sure.
It was a good Super Bowl for me.
Yes.
This week I won a good bit of money, had a couple bets win, so I was super happy about that. Doesn't always work out that way, but let's get into some things that some people may not be so happy about.
They're not going to be happy, I don't think.
Especially when we tell them. And that has to do with mortgage activity and mortgage rates this week. As always, we're going to stick with what we started with, and that's the Mortgage Bankers Association. They come out with a report on Wednesday morning. Now, when they report a rate, it's probably accurate because it takes a while to get it. So I'm guessing it's probably Friday afternoon, Monday, midday at the latest rate.
Yeah.
And rates, as you know, can change every day, and they pretty much did every day last week. But let's talk about applications. Market Composite Index, a measure of mortgage loan application volume, decreased 7.7% on a seasonally adjusted basis from 1 week earlier. On an unadjusted basis, it also decreased 7%. The Refinance Index decreased 13% from the previous week and was 76% lower than the same week a year ago. Why did that happen? Well, as we've been talking about, very strong correlation between interest rates and mortgage applications. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, which I'm going to add an addendum to, last week the interest rate increased from 6.18% to 6.39% on a 30-year fixed, with points increasing from 0.64 to 0.7 points. They always have a rate that includes points. So your par rate or rate would be a little bit higher than that. Like a 0.7% rate on a 6.39, probably 6.5, 6.6
Right.
on an interest rate. It continued to get worse after this came out throughout the week. We had 2 Fed officials, Loretta Mester, M-E-S-T-E-R.
Yeah.
How would you pronounce
M-E-S, Mester.
Mester, who's kind of hawkish, came out and talked about or floated the idea of a 50 basis point or a 0.5% rate increase at the next Fed meeting because of these reports. And so did James Bullard.
Mullard.
This is our podcast, so I can say something, and not, if I offend somebody, I always want to say Bullard is a dullard. He likes to hear himself talk. He always moves markets, and he drives me crazy. He states the obvious. And the funny thing is, he's a hawk now. But he used to be a dove. A hawk is somebody who is in favor of restrictive Fed policy that's going to slow the economy and slow inflation down.
Right.
A dove is somebody who wants it to be less restrictive or actually to ease it a bit to help stimulate things in the economy. And it seems like most people these days on the Fed are hawkish. Neil Kashkari told me last week. I said, hey, he used to be a very big dove. He seems to be someone who's also hawkish. Now, this all started.
I think it's hard not to be hawkish lately.
Well, here's what happened. We had the lower rates was February 2nd, right? The next day, the non-farm payroll, or what we call the jobs report, came out. There were annual adjustments, some big seasonal adjustment factors, but the bottom line is the headline number said 517,000 jobs created, and the unemployment rate dropped to 3.4%. That was followed up by a CPI report, which showed inflation dropping, but it didn't drop as much as expected, and the month-over-month number was a little higher than expected. And then after that, the coup de grace was a retail sales report that came out, and retail sales month-over-month, another one that had a huge annual readjustment, still said they were expecting 1.8% increase, which is a huge increase. It went to 3% increase. Well, there's a lot of people speculating that that number is because of that adjustment, but also it might have been people taking advantage of sales post-holiday, taking advantage of their gift cards, things like that. But that number, all those numbers spooked the market, spooked Fed officials. We started having one Fed official after the other come out and give speeches and talk about how the Fed's job's not done, and all of a sudden 50 basis points the next meeting started being talked about. By Thursday, our preferred interest rate, Mortgage News Daily, said 6.75% on a 30-year fixed, and by Friday it was 6.8%. I'm here to tell you, at least we got a little relief Friday afternoon. We actually had reprices for the better Friday afternoon. A Fed official came out and talked about how the job...
And said, JK...
Well, she said she prefers 25% basis points because we've hiked the rates so much, it takes a while. There's a lag where Fed rate increases start hitting the economy. She prefers to go slow and see
what the effect is.
The effect is, rather than raising so fast and then having to revert course real quick. Generally speaking, it wasn't a good week. We were just looking at, February 2nd, we were looking at 5.99.
5.99, and to go.
I was locking and closing people in the high fives.
Yeah.
For convention government loans were, you could get in the mid fives, believe it or not.
80 basis points.
80 basis points in 2 weeks. It took us a month and a half to get them.
Yeah.
And that shows you how rates always go up faster than they go down.
Now, hopefully the song will kick in. What
goes
up?
Well, let's see.
Must
Hopefully
come
the
down.
market adjusts to this. Here's my vote for the week. Given the adjustment, there's not a lot of data coming out.
Right.
We do next week have PCE, which is another inflation report. It stands for Personal Consumption Expenditures, and the core PCE number is the Fed's preferred number. That is expected to come down a little bit, and hopefully maybe that'll happen, and maybe the markets have priced in at least the hawkishness of the Fed for the coming week. But anyway, I expect that rates will be flat in the coming week. If you want to look for a bright side to all this, since it reduced applications, maybe we can start getting a little balanced. It was still a tight inventory, tight market out there. And if you're somebody who's looking to buy going into the spring season, rates are a little bit higher, and you're somebody where I think it was about a 4 or 5% difference in a monthly payment on a $350,000 loan increase.
Right.
It's not awful. So if you're somebody who has a little flexibility in your budget, it might be a good thing for you in that you might scare away a few buyers and not have so much competition when it comes.
That's a good takeaway for a buyer now.
Yeah. So
there may be less
you have more specific numbers as far as inventory and home sales in the Baltimore area.
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on. Moving back, last week I used the January totals and talked about some trends. This week I'll get back to the last 7 days to keep.
I think you should do that every month.
I think I'm going to. Yeah, right toward the middle of the month we get the previous month's synopsis, and then that's a good
that's
time
probably
to
why the
bring
Mortgage
that in.
Bankers Association seasonally adjusts the week-over-week numbers, because they get a bit skewed.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
if you do your weekly thing at the end of the month, I think you'll have a better picture of trends.
Yeah. Good. All right. Active listings in the last 7 days. We had 308 come on the market, 623 pending sales, and 404 homes sold in the last 7 days. 251 went off the market for other reasons other than sales, whether that's temporarily off the market, withdrawn, canceled, expired.
Is that a high number? Sounds high.
It's higher than it has been,
Okay.
and I think that's a trend we're going to start to see a little bit more as the market, if the rates stay where they are and the market slows down a little bit,
Yeah.
homes are going to sit a little bit longer. You're going to see more expired listings, but it is a little higher. Yeah. So the average days on the market, 37. Median is 14. If you compare that to what we were having a year ago, obviously it's higher, but still a healthy pace. A normal pace for days on the market say back in 2019, we'd see 30, 45 days, and that would be okay. So we haven't seen that in a long time. So the 14 doesn't bother me that much. $155,312,670 in total volume.
Okay.
So $155 million plus. The number of concessions, people getting seller help on their purchase for whatever reason, whether that was negotiated up front or whether that was the result of a home inspection or some other issue that cropped up.
Okay.
178 of those 404 sales, so that represents 44.06%. It's been, we've been around that 47 to 45, 44% in the past few weeks.
And you get this data once the loan closes. I would say, from my experience, it doesn't seem like I'm getting a lot of them at the beginning.
It's rare to get them at the beginning,
Post-home inspection, sellers are happy that they have somebody under contract. Something comes up, and they're more than happy to give a concession to close the deal rather than put the home back on the market. So that's something that definitely has shifted, I would say.
Well, typically when you see homes going off the market within 14 days, so selling within 14 days, you're not feeling a need to give too many seller concessions.
Right.
There are homes that have been sitting, if it's not that HGTV ready home and it's been sitting for a little while, if you get up into the 60 to 90 to 120 days, if it's been on the market that long, that gives you more of an opportunity to negotiate up front and maybe get some seller help. Right. But when it's a brand new home and it's spick and span and looks beautiful and everything's updated, it's going to be a hard proposition to try to get upfront seller help. Okay, so the average list to sales price ratio, that's the number that we track to see how sellers are performing with regard to how much of that original list price they're getting in the final sales price.
You even take the time to take out auctions out of that number.
I do, yeah. So I'll give you both. Including auctions, it's 100.69%. Right? Now, some of those auctions are 190%, 180%. Luckily, there aren't too many of those, but it definitely skews the number quite a bit. So I also pull the auctions out.
What do they use for that? I guess when you see an auction listed, it's often the starting price or the starting
That's what
bidding.
and typically they'll say that in the description, and I'm actually glad they do that because sometimes buyers will see that number and they'll think, "Oh, great, the house is sold. It's going to sell for $10,000." No, it's not. That's the starting price for the auction. Right. So if you pull auctions out of the mix, we're still at 99.41%. So, and that's actually ticked up a bit from previous weeks. So sellers are still getting almost exactly what the list price was. So that's the last 7 days in the real estate market. Now, Michael.
Yes, sir.
When we come back and we get into the scoop, we're talking today about home selling. Now, last time we did the home buying and we split it up,
we're doing the
part
other
one,
side.
part two. We're going to do the same thing with home selling. This is home selling part one, from the launch, from when you're thinking about selling your home all the way up to getting under contract. Then next week, we'll pick up the contract to close that deal.
Drop it.
All right, we're back to Be Real, the Maryland Real Estate Podcast. I'm Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long & Foster, joined as always by
Michael Becker of Sierra Pacific Mortgage. I don't think I mentioned that in the first,
Not,
who I work for.
Neither did I. Yeah.
Very important to know.
Well, the brilliant Michael Becker.
Oh, aren't you kind?
I am kind. I'm super kind.
I have my moments. I don't know if brilliance is always something I show, but I do have my moments from time to time.
I've seen several.
And I hope I have a few of those for this show today. We're going to talk about the selling process. And this is the beginning part of the selling process when you first decide to sell, all the way up till accepting an offer and getting under contract.
Yes,
And
perfect.
We'll do the second part next week.
Yeah. And there, just so everyone understands, there are a lot of things that go along with buying and selling a home, right? So this particular episode and the next one, we're going to focus just on the selling side. We'll deal with, in a future episode, the process of buying and selling at the same time. 'Cause
Okay.
There's a lot of detail in that
It can get tricky.
by itself. Right. So I think that stands alone as its own episode. So when you first start thinking about selling, something's either sticking in your craw about the current house, or
There's a reason that
there's
people
usually-
just
yeah.
don't
Right.
wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to sell my house."
Right. Typically not. So there's something driving that. The NAR Generational Trends Report.
It's NAR.
NAR is the National Association of
I
Realtors.
knew that, but I just
Thank you.
Maybe not
No, it's a
everyone knew
good
that.
point, right? We assume, because we hear these things all the time, everybody
we're in
knows
an
that.
acronym-driven industry.
There's an acronym for everything. So let's get into that.
Deciding to sell. Why do people decide to move?
Right.
And you have the National Association of Realtors has a generational trends report. Here you
Comes
go.
out every year, and it's great information about the demographics around buying and selling. And they list in Exhibit 6-15 primary the primary reasons for selling a previous home.
Uh-huh.
Now, for all sellers across the board, because it differs based on your age group, but
Okay.
for all sellers across the board, the highest percentage at 18% was that they want to move closer to friends and family. An
So
age-
if we were on Family
right,
Feud,
name the
Family Feud, we pulled
top
100
5, right?
top 5 answers are on the board. We pulled we pulled 100 people over 55.
Show me. Move closer to friends and family, right?
So
Yes.
I hear that.
Yeah.
How many people said they want to move further away from their friends and family? Occasionally that happens. I'm just joking.
I'm sure there are.
I got to
there
get away
are-
from them. They're driving me crazy.
Well, that's absolute that
I'm
that
kidding.
is a driver
I don't think they
in
would
some
answer that
cases.
on a survey.
Well, you get a divorce, maybe that's important,
there-
right?
yeah,
Or
true
whatever,
that.
right? You may have a reason. All right, so when you're younger, the next category that's the highest, home's too small, right?
Growing
39,
family, that's always,
Right.
yeah, the move up buyer.
39% from the 23 to 31 age group.
Yeah, you buy a two or three bedroom townhome condo to
To
start
get
out
started,
your first house.
starter home. That's the reason why that phrase exists. It's the
We-
starter home.
My personal experience, I'm one of 4 boys. We were born within 4 years of one another. Our first home was a Putty Hill Avenue townhome.
Mm-hmm.
Row home back then, they called it.
Back in the day.
I guess I still think it's a row home. But anyway, my youngest brother when he was a baby, had his own bedroom. Me and my 2 brothers shared a bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
As we started getting older, it became a little tough to do. So we moved out towards Baldwin and got a 5-bedroom house. We all had our own bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So
Anyway, so your
reverse
family's
that.
growing.
Right.
That's one
so,
reason to move.
So reverse that. When you get older, home is too
Downsize.
large, right?
Yeah.
So that
What
doesn't
do I need
exist.
this 5-bedroom house with a swimming pool, and
Right.
4 acres of grass to cut?
How do you want to? Do you want to maintain that when you get up into, into my
Plus, you're
age group?
probably sitting on a ton of equity, and if you downsize,
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
may be able to sell the home and buy the next house for cash.
Yeah. So some other categories that come into this consideration: neighborhoods become less desirable. There's a change in family situation, job relocations.
That happens a lot. I mean, interestingly enough, the interest rate, rise in interest rate is, a lot of people are speculating it's going to keep people's. If none of those things move you, you're probably right. You might not want to move, given you have a low interest rate and interest rates are a lot higher.
Right.
But there's something to be, now that more people are going back to work. The economy has changed. People will probably get a hybrid situation where they might be able to work from home occasionally, but more and more employers want you to be at the office.
Yep.
And if your
Although
commute,
I think that's going to be tough.
if it wasn't that big of a deal at the beginning of COVID, and who knows, your office may have changed. The reason I'm bringing this up, I have a client right now I'm working on who owns a home in White Marsh, wants to move to closer to Fort Meade where he works. That's a long commute.
It's a
White
horrible
Marsh
commute. 95?
The tunnel every day.
It's brutal. I used to do that commute for 15 years.
It's a long, and it's, he's got 2 little kids, and he's probably exhausted by the time he gets home.
Michael, there was a time my daughter had a concert when she was in elementary school. And I worked in Columbia, so I wasn't even as far south as where he works. And I had to get up to Towson. There's no good way. 95's bad. Going around 70 and 695 is bad. There's just coming through the city is bad. There's no good way.
Right.
That night, I left 3 hours early to be at my daughter's concert. I walked in just as she was walking off the stage. And I almost, at that moment, quit that job.
Or listed your house for sale.
Or listed my house for sale, right. But then that would involve my
Anyway,
wife.
the point is that there are reasons for people to move, even in a higher interest rate environment where people have rates much lower.
Yeah.
The house is getting, if you can qualify, rates won't be high forever.
It's true.
Who knows when they'll drop or how much they'll drop, but we certainly are on the high end of an interest rate cycle. So it's not if you can qualify and it's within your budget and you can get, it's not that big a deal. You might be increasing your monthly payment, but if it adds to quality of life, there is very good likelihood that at some point in the future you may be able to refinance and lower that monthly payment.
Sure. Well, the other thing that's kind of interesting about the home seller consideration, when should I move, is that the tenure in the previous home has gone up over the
it
over
always
the
does
past,
that.
right?
It's interesting.
Yeah. It's
I always
used to
tell
be 5-7 years, and now they're, just to give you an idea, 1 year or less is 8% of all sellers, but the highest percentage, 21 years or more.
Wow.
Right? That's a lot. The median is 8 years.
When rates go up, that tends to go out. I use that number 5 to 7 years to tell people the average mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, only lasts 5 to 7 years because people move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they refinance.
But people have been staying put longer, and in this period when we have higher interest rates and a lot of people refied and are at that 3 or maybe even sub 3 rate that they have,
3s,
that's hard to digest if you're going to move from that.
There's got to be, you have to have a motivating factor.
Got to be a motivating factor.
In some respect, you want to be closer to family. Your house is too small. People who want to downsize, a lot of people speculate that they may not sell. I think that people who are sitting on a ton of equity might, if they have too large, if they want to downsize and they're sitting on a ton of equity and they could buy who cares what interest rates are if you can buy the next house cash?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Okay. Anyway, so
those are the reasons for people to decide.
right?
So you've decided to go.
Yep. So now you got to decide, do you have a place to go? That's that bigger topic of buying and selling at the same time. But where are you going to go, right? Are you going to stay close? Are you going to move farther away? Are you moving for a commuting decision? Whatever it is. But you need to decide where you're going to be going.
Okay.
The other thing that's really important is to come up with a time frame. Now, most people don't say, hey, I need to sell my house. Can we do that tomorrow?
Right.
Most people tend to think about it.
The only time it seems to happen quickly to me, in my experience as a loan officer, is when somebody first contacts me to see if they can qualify to buy a new home without it being contingent on the sale of their existing home.
Right.
and they might be close. Because it does make it easier if you can buy the first home without having to sell the second one. That way you can go out and find your
much
home.
easier. Especially the past couple of years, it was almost impossible.
It was very
to
hard
get a
to get
contingent offer accepted by the sellers.
Right. But if you do have time, or if you think you're going to do that, and even if you found out you have to be contingent, you probably should. That should be part of the planning process.
Absolutely. Right. Ideally, you want, at a minimum, 3 months from the date that you sign the listing agreement to when you need to move.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because it's going to take you. You're going to sign a listing agreement. You're going to have to get the house ready. You're going to have to mark. Well, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's all right. Yeah, it's all good. But yes, there's lots of things to do that we're going to talk about in the future. Yep. But there's a lot to do, right?
Right. So you want
having
a little time
at least
to do all
3
those
months.
things before you have to have that house closed.
And it's really important to do that because like I talked about before, one of the things that we try to focus on with our clients is reducing their level of stress. When you're trying to cram things into a much shorter calendar, it's very stressful.
You know, I'll have to do some research on it, but it is a stressful thing. Moving is always high up there. The number one is public speaking. Number two is dying.
Yeah, I'd find that pretty stressful.
I've never had a problem. There's a comedian out there who jokes about it. So I think it's Seinfeld who says it. So I find it interesting that the public speaking is scarier than dying. So you don't want to be the guy giving the eulogy. You'd rather be in the casket than be the one delivering.
That's funny.
The eulogy, but up there in those life events that are stressful, moving is one of them. So by
slightly lower than
look at it this way, folks.
Speaking.
Anytime you're running late, like mornings are busy, especially when you have kids and you're running around the house and you got to grab this 8 million things, your computer, your phone, your all this stuff. And if you get up 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, and you have time, invariably it's going to be a mad rush to get out the door. But if you have a few more minutes to do it, it tends to be less stressful.
Right.
When you rush, you always forget things. You're rushing, you're behind, all right, and you rush out, and next thing you know, you get in your car and you realize, oh, my phone's sitting on the bathroom counter. So I run back inside and do that.
You wind up taking longer when you're stressed out because you forget those things. You have to backtrack, right? I think we talked about it last episode. If we know where we're starting, we know where we're headed, we can plot out that most efficient path to get there. But when you're stressed and you're worried about things, you make these wrong turns.
People have jobs, they have children. If you're moving, there's a lot that goes. There's work that needs to be done.
Life
to list
intervenes.
The house, and then when it's under contract, and then when you're moving. So there's a lot to be done. You don't want to cram all that into a few weeks or a month or two.
Yes,
so that
absolutely.
makes sense. 3 months in advance.
So you're going to find when you start out, you're going to find a realtor, ideally. Although you can sell a home on your own.
FSBO?
For sale by owner. FSBO is another acronym that we have. Now, I can tell you that the average FSBO is pretty unsuccessful. About 13% of the homes that go for sale by owner are actually sold that way. The rest tend to give up and then hire a realtor eventually. And the idea is typically that they want to avoid paying realtors
They think that if I can sell the house, I can maybe sell it a little bit cheaper.
Right.
Somebody might want to buy it. We don't have to deal with realtors.
The problem is that those for sale by owner homes tend to not get exposed to the market as widely as a realtor is able to do.
Well,
they don't have the marketing knowledge that the realtors tend to have.
The agents representing the buyers may not want to show your house.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have a licensed professional on the other side to work with.
Which can be harrowing, yes, absolutely. So there are a number of reasons why those for sale by owners tend to be less successful.
So you're going to hire a realtor. Let's throw this out. If you're going to sell a house, probably best to hire an agent, real estate agent. Okay.
Yes.
So what's the first step?
Right. So you're going to call that realtor over to your house, and you're going to have a listing appointment where we're going to walk through the house. You're going to show us all the details of the home. We're going to talk about the things that you love about this house. Why did you decide to buy it in the first place? What really appealed to you? Mm-hmm. We'll use all that in the marketing, right? What appealed to you may appeal to someone else, so that's always great information to gather. And we'll get all the details of the home. How old is the water heater? How old is the HVAC? How old's the roof? When did you do this last? When did you update this? How much did you spend on that? And then we'll talk about pricing strategies in that meeting. And there are a few pricing strategies out there. I will say, whether you love them or you hate them, there's something to be said for Zillow and the democratization of housing data.
Well, there's data. You can see data out there. Even
the public has access to it.
They have access of not only the listings, but stuff that's sold recently.
Absolutely.
Many times there's listings with pictures of items that have sold is out there. So it does give you a good idea. I mean, you with the multiple list system, agents always had access to data that now is readily, or a lot of it's readily available. Not all of it.
But it is. You're right. It's readily available. A lot of it is readily available to the public, and it has democratized that process. That's a good thing because consumers are more informed.
I agree 100%, but the other issue is the Zestimate.
Well,
and when you run into it from a listing
we do, and
when somebody thinks their house is worth.
Here's what I'll say: whether it's a Zestimate or any other automated valuation tool, is they've never been inside your home. They don't know the details of your home. It's an algorithmic approach to pricing based on what are perceived to be comparable homes in your area.
And a lot of times the data that's coming up with that estimate is inaccurate. And the one I think about most often is the square footage.
Square footage can be wrong.
The bedrooms, because it's people list a house as 5 bedrooms, but 2 of those bedrooms are below grade.
Or they're below. They can be below grade as long as they have ingress and egress, 2 separate forms of ingress and egress. That can be a legal bedroom, but.
Well, I understand that, but from a standpoint of a comparable...
But from pricing, yes, it does affect. But here's the thing. Mm-hmm. That automated valuation tool has, like I said, they've never been inside your home, but they don't know the specifics of that neighborhood. In Maryland, especially in the Baltimore metro area, pricing can change pretty dramatically from neighborhood to neighborhood, and in some cases even block to block,
from home to home within the community.
So it's a big crapshoot to try to go with some kind of automated valuation tool and expect that to be right. Now, there are parts of the country where their homes are newer, like the Sun City in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Every home's the same. They all built around the same time. They all have the same features and amenities, and an automated valuation tool of any type is going to do better in that kind of scenario. But here on the East Coast, you've got homes that have been built in the 1800s next to something that was built in 1950, Correct. Which was next to something that was built last year.
Correct.
How do you do that in an algorithm? It's impossible. So
just my way here, Graham, if you drive Seminary Avenue and you go through Old Lutherville, but then go over closer to Falls Road, there's communities. There's 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between the ages of the homes, just on one street. So I get what you're saying. So you sit down and you have a pricing strategy. Now, what do you mean by pricing strategies? Do you mean, hey, I guess every agent's different. And I guess you have to read the client as well. To me, a strategy that was working for the longest time during and post-COVID was the listed fairly or lower than average to get a bidding war started.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's what you're talking about. I'm just coming up with a pricing strategy I know of to give an example.
That is one very good pricing strategy. The one that I think people, say my age, in our generation, how many people do you know who say, I want to leave room for negotiation, so let's price it higher, and we're going to leave room for negotiation. So this goes back to what I was saying just a little bit ago about the democratization of the data. Mm-hmm. That data is available now. People have been on that app or something like it for a long time, browsing homes. Right? They call it house porn for a reason. They're addicted to looking at these homes. Mm-hmm. But the point is that they know what's a reasonable price in that neighborhood. It's great because it's a more educated consumer, and that's the end goal that we want everyone to have, is we want them to be educated. You've got to make an informed decision. But they know if a property is priced too high, and what happens is that people tend to ignore it because they know it's overpriced, and so no one goes to see the home. And then you get frustrated, and then that gets us frustrated, and then we have to have a conversation about a price adjustment, and nobody wants to go there. So the old leave room for negotiation pricing strategy, I'd say that's 1950s approach. Now, pricing at or maybe even slightly, and when I say slightly, I'm not talking about 10%. I'm just saying slightly, maybe a few $1,000s
Well, it might be
below.
worth $510,000. You might list it. Your idea, what you think a fair value of the home is $510, $499. That number, it's the same.
Well, let's talk about that, because here's you mentioned $499, and a lot of agents do that. But here's where I think that's maybe a mistake.
Because I think I know where you're going, but
because all the search tools have pricing increments, and you want as many eyes on this as possible. So as a realtor, we can set up a search that goes from 489 or 487 up to 529 or whatever. We can create those strange ranges, but most of the search tools that are out there are in increments on the, either the tens of thousands or the 50s of thousands or the hundreds of thousands. And so if you price off of that, you may be missing a large portion of the public viewership for that home.
Somebody might be in the mood for a $500,000 plus home,
right? And so they
see $499.
Your $499.
Perfect.
It's $1,000 difference from your property to that where their range was. You would have been the bargain for them, and they never come to see it because they never saw it. Got it. So yes, so pricing strategies are very important. We hash all that out with clients.
Hash it all out. You come up with an idea. So do you, at that point, this is just part of the appointment. You haven't decided. You just had those discussions.
Yes, and we make recommendations to the client, but it's up to the client. It's always the client's decision, finally, what the price will be for their home. We can advise clients only so far, and then it's up to them to decide, I agree with you, or no, I'd like to do this. And so we'll work with the client to advise them as best we can.
That appointment's gone well.
Yes.
What's the and
assuming
they're going to work with you,
right? So then we put a listing agreement together.
All right,
and that agreement is an agreement between the brokerage and the individual selling the home, and it spells out all the terms for how we're going to handle things, when we're going to go into the MLS, when we're going to go active, the compensation that's involved, the disclosures that the seller is going to provide to the buyers. All of that goes into this listing agreement, and the disclosures are a really important part of that. Maryland is a pretty strong disclosure state.
Makes sense.
We are not a caveat emptor state. Buyer beware.
Mm-hmm.
We are a disclosure state, and what that means, and it's a good thing for buyers, is that sellers are obligated to disclose most things. Now, if they get a break on haunted houses in Maryland, we don't have to disclose those. We also don't have to disclose deaths in the home.
Wait a minute, is that serious?
There are some states that require that kind of stuff.
What did you haunted houses?
Haunted houses or deaths in the home. There's a number of things.
You don't have to disclose.
You do in certain other states. You do not in Maryland.
So the reason I brought this up, anybody who's been following what happened in Baltimore County with the Powers Avenue house.
That's a good point. It's the
second. Had a terrible tragedy.
It's a terrible tragedy years ago, now
another one.
The same house. Yeah.
Who's going to want to buy that house?
That's a tough situation. I feel horrible for that. For everyone involved with that.
It's the Amityville horror of Baltimore County.
It's a nightmare. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
so yes, disclosures are super important. The one piece of advice that we give to all of our clients is, when in doubt, disclose. If you're not sure whether you should disclose it, disclose it.
Okay,
right?
Makes sense.
Now, if you're anything that can be a latent defect, and a latent defect is something that may not be visible to the naked eye, to a home inspector coming through the home, to a buyer that's looking at the home, but you know about it. Right?
What would you call it?
Water in the
Give
basement,
me an example of a
latent defect. If you get water in the basement on a regular basis, but it doesn't have water right now, and it doesn't have water when the buyers come through, right? Anything's been painted, and you have no visible cue that there's a problem there, but you get water in the basement, you need to disclose that.
Gotcha.
So when in doubt, disclose. And we'll go through all those disclosures with you.
Well, yeah,
now, there are certain situations
that
when
is an out.
It is. Absolutely.
Can't the buyer go after the seller if they
If they failed to disclose something important.
Or they didn't disclose it. They
Latent
knew something was wrong with the property. They didn't let the buyers know it. It's
something they should have, they know,
like
or they should have known. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Same thing applies to the realtors out there, by the way.
Makes sense.
If you should have known it, that's the burden of proof there. If you should have known it,
or reasonable tests, a
Yes.
reasonable realtor who's proficient at their job should have known that this was an issue.
Right. Anyway, so when in doubt,
disclose that in your listing.
Yeah. All right, so you get past all the agreements. There are a few activities that the seller is going to go through. One of the first in that pre-listing phase, what we call the 3 Ds. That's declutter, depersonalize, and detach.
Mm-hmm.
So, declutter. People in their kitchens have
I've
a whole
shown
bunch
you
of
pictures.
stuff.
I
right.
made a big joke one time at our
Oh my
networking
gosh!
meeting of a house.
I remember that
listed.
photo, and I can't believe somebody
How
would put a
filthy
photo.
and trash and everything in the kitchen, and the bedroom was unmade and clothes everywhere. How you would take a picture of that and list it that way?
I don't understand it.
Unbelievable.
I don't understand it.
But yes,
As a realtor, if I walked into a house that was
your
like
house
that, I'd
is-
be cleaning the house before we'd put photos in the MLS.
When your house is for sale, it's probably going to be the cleanest it's ever been,
Ideally.
especially if you have a family, right?
Yeah, sure.
Or prior to showings
Right.
or open houses.
Now, declutter means a lot of things, right? Even things like the stuff that's sitting out on the counter in the kitchen. If you can get to zero clutter on the countertop, that's a beautiful thing. So put away things like the paper towel holder, put away the extra canisters, any spices, any of that kind of stuff. Just get rid of it
I'll give you
from
an
the
idea of
countertops.
declutter that you probably imagine. You're a hunter, and you love it, and you have ducks that you've shot on your wall.
Michael.
If the next buyer's a hunter, he may appreciate it, but what are the chances?
Well, funny you should say that. We had a house in Sykesville. It was an estate sale.
Okay.
We do quite a few estate sales because it's a horrific process that the families have to go through, and so it's an area of specialty for us, and we do a lot of them. We had this one in Sykesville. The former owner, who had passed away, was an avid hunter.
There you go.
His longtime companion remained in the home and emotionally
Was attached.
could not take any of that stuff. He had a room in his home that was his game room.
Gotcha.
And surrounding every wall, there were heads mounted on every wall. There was a big, huge stuffed bear. There were squirrels and other kinds of taxidermy all over the place. If you walked into that place and you are not a hunter, it's
unless you're a taxidermist,
right,
or a hunter,
right, it's overwhelming, right?
You may not like it.
We took
Imagine
that listing.
people buying it, or vegans who think meat is murder.
So we took that listing because we're trying to help this family. The woman who was still living in the home couldn't bring herself to let us remove it. So what do? We have this lemon situation. We've got to turn it into lemonade. So that's what we did. We marketed it as a game's, hunter's paradise, right? Whatever you want to call it.
But they made it tough, and I'm glad you sold it, but it would have been a lot easier if they listened to the professional and made...
We had so many realtors who came through that property tell us, you have got to remove all this stuff, and I would have loved to have done that. Ideally, that's exactly what you do.
Well,
that's part of that decluttering and depersonalization process, but in some situations, it's just not possible, and in that situation, you do the best with what you got. So we marketed it that way. We actually sold it in 6 days higher than list price. So
somebody saw the value, and that was fortunate for you. But declutter, most people think of things that are left out because you're living in the home all the time.
Right.
Right.
Your hair dryer, your curling iron. I can't really talk about hair dryers and curling irons. I don't have the equipment to worry about.
So that declutter, depersonalize, detach, get
detached. And depersonalize is, any of the family photos that are on the wall, things like that. It's a great idea to take that kind of stuff down. If you have a mirror, keep mirrors up. Mirrors are good.
It's funny. I was thinking just that. My townhome condo at the beach, I want to put a mirror in the living room to make it look a little bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it does.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and you know what else? What's the goal? You want them to imagine themselves living in the home.
Right.
And they can actually see themselves
In
the
the
home
home with the
in the mirror.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So,
right.
yeah, mirrors are great. Detach is the other aspect of this, and that's very important. If you've made the decision to sell, you've got to stop thinking of it as your home. Think of it as a house, not your home. And
because it's not going to be your home for much longer, so it's maybe now is a good time to start detaching from that.
You've got to make that
if you want to
separation.
get top dollar.
If you want to get top dollar. And we'll walk you through, here's what we advise, here are the things that we suggest. We have a great Preparing Your Home for Sale guide, by the way. If anybody wants a copy of that, shoot us an email. Happy to send that out to you. But we also have that same thing on the buyer's guide. We should have mentioned that in our last episode. We have a great 40-page buyer guide that.
But no, you have an idea, and it has all these ideas in it.
Like all the tips.
You have anything in
here?
Room by
room checklist, right? So it's great. But yes, all those things that you need to do to get the house ready.
We have a thing a little here to get ready for colors.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say vibrant colors are in right now.
They are.
Because everything was gray forever.
Everything was gray forever, but here's the thing. If you're selling,
neutral colors
are still the best. Now, it doesn't necessarily doesn't have to be gray, Dover white, some kind of alabaster, some kind of warmer white.
There's
still a great tans, but but lighter neutral colors are still the way to go.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, so after you've done that, let's say they did get rid of these vibrant colors, neutral colors, decluttered, detached.
Cleaned it up.
Cleaned the house, depersonalized.
Then it's time for photos and video.
Okay.
Now,
do you guys do you use your iPhone for that when you go to the listing?
I can't tell you how many times we see these iPhone photos. And
I know.
They're agents
you spot them a mile away.
The worst thing is I see these, they're crooked. Yeah. They're underexposed. Mm-hmm. They've got the camera held up.
They didn't even try and put a filter on it.
There's nothing.
Pre or post photo.
Yeah. And that's lazy.
There's times of days that the house looks the best.
Absolutely.
There's times when the lighting is the best.
Right.
How good does a front of a house look with a beautiful sunset behind it?
Very
and
beautiful.
And then the next pictures with everything lit up, so you can see yourself enjoying it on a summer evening or something like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. So professional photography is an important.
That's the point, professional.
Yes. So we hire a professional photographer to come in. Same thing with the video. We do professional video in certain circumstances, if it makes sense, if there's a property that's on the water, larger lot, things like that, something interesting about it. Drone photography makes a big difference sometimes. So we use all those tools, plenty of tools in the toolkit to get the great pictures.
Seems to be a big thing for the listings at the beach to show your proximity to the ocean.
It is, right? That's an important thing. Now, we used to talk about the importance of curb appeal, and curb appeal is still super important, but it's now web appeal that's more important, because where are people going to find their home first?
Yeah. People don't go. I mean, open houses, people still like to go to them. They still have them and go to them, but that's where people often would get their first taste or look at a house they might be interested in.
Absolutely. So you need to have the photos and the video represent the house in the best possible fashion. That's going to get the eyes on the property and the people inside the home. And that's the end goal. You want to get as many people inside the home as you possibly can, generate as much interest as you possibly can. All right, so that's web appeal, and curb appeal is still important. Don't minimize that. That's actually some of the most cost-effective work that you can do in a home. Spend some money on curb appeal. Make it look great.
Front door.
Very absolutely. Important. Yep. They say
it's coming to be spring. How nice do gardens look?
Absolutely.
This time,
beautiful flowers, and
they put flowers. It makes sense.
It really helps.
$100 on flowers.
It really helps. They say a front door that's black makes a home $8,000 more valuable.
Black, really?
Black. Yeah. It's not the only color that's good, but black seems to be the number one. Yeah. But anyway. So we get the photos done. Then we put together a professionally printed listing brochure.
Now that brochure's for when you have open houses or
When you have
their
open houses or
showings, and
people
somebody
that are
can
coming
take
through.
with them.
And the whole idea behind that, the concept of object permanence, something that you have that's physical,
Sure.
sticks in your head a little bit more.
Sure.
And people are less inclined to toss. If you just have a printout of your listing information in the house, that's going in the circular file. But if you have a really nicely printed 4-color brochure,
they may have other people who are decision makers in the family, or not decision makers, but might have input as to whether you're buying or not. A nice brochure that they can show them is probably a little nicer than trying to blow up something you saw.
Can be, right. And it helps stick in their mind a bit more too. So,
Okay.
So that's important. Then we do a big marketing launch right before we put the property in the MLS. We'll announce that it's coming soon.
That seems to be a big thing these days, especially with limited inventory. Agents love to list. I don't see how homes go right into listing. They're often coming soon, especially with social media.
Yeah. Now, there are some rules regarding coming soon with the MLS. For instance, you cannot start mass marketing a property unless you're within 1 day of the property going into the MLS. Now, it can go in as coming soon.
What's considered mass marketing?
Any kind of social media,
Really?
any kind of mass email, anything like that.
It seems to me that I see coming,
Well, but it can go in as coming soon. If it goes in as coming soon, you get 1 day before that, you can start mass marketing. But once it goes coming soon, then you can advertise it anywhere that you want.
Gotcha.
Right? And the coming soon period was intentionally created for situations where you might have improvements that the people are doing on the home or clean outs that they need to do or things like that. But a lot of people have also started using them as just marketing opportunities. We can put the home on the market. It doesn't tick up on the days on the market. If you look at days on the market, that's a really important metric. It doesn't show the days on the market when it's coming soon. So it allows people to know about it.
Well, it kind of gets the interest, people's peaked interest if it's in a neighborhood they like, if the outsource, because most coming soon listings I see generally are only a couple pictures and mostly just an outside front picture or maybe a couple other.
It can be.
You're not going to have the entire listing in that's at least what I've seen.
It can be. Right. Now, there are times when we've seen a whole slew of photos, professionally done photos done, and then they still use coming soon for whatever reason. And it could be any number of reasons. You may decide that the family needs a week after photos are done to clean out certain things in their storage or whatever it is. So you have all the photos and you want to go coming soon. Here's the limit. You can't have the house coming soon any longer than 21 days. That's your absolute max. So use that as your time frame. 7 to 14 is pretty common. Sometimes, when you need to do a lot more work, that 21 days can be used, but that's the absolute maximum in the coming soon status. Then it has to go active or temporarily off or off in some other status. Okay? All right. So a lot of people ask, well, what's the best day of the week to hit the market?
Yeah, it is.
There's no perfect day.
Well, you have an opinion.
I do have an opinion, right? So
what's the most common day a house is
I
listed?
will say this. When pre-COVID, it was a very common practice to have a house go into the MLS on a Tuesday, have a broker's open on a Wednesday.
And then Thursday you
and then it's active when you have a broker's open because you can't invite people into the home until it's active. But when it goes active on that Wednesday, you have the broker's open, and then that weekend you might have another open house for the public. And that was a fairly standard practice. During COVID, that whole broker's open concept got eliminated. It just wasn't being done. Open houses in many cases weren't being done. And that's a personal decision that the seller needs to make. Are they really going to consider an open house? Because there's some pluses, but there's also some risks associated with an open house. So that's a decision. We go through all of that discussion with the seller, let them make the decision as to what they'd like to do. But with regard to what day go active. Now, I think when you get closer to the weekend, that can be better because you get more people available. So if you can go active on a Thursday or a Friday,
Right.
I think that
Makes sense.
that can be more beneficial.
I would agree with
If you
that.
go active on a Monday, you just tend to
You
start
wasted
to
a couple
tick.
days.
Yeah, you're going to waste a couple of days, and they're precious days because the first couple of days on the market are super important.
Makes
All right,
a lot of sense.
that's getting ready to get the listing active. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about once it's active, how we handle all that.
Sounds great.
Try it.
Welcome back to the Be Real Podcast, the Maryland Real Estate Podcast. I'm Michael Becker of Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And as always, I'm joined by
Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long and Foster.
Brad. We were talking about getting your house ready to list, the
Yep.
listing appointment, and getting the listing ready. Now we need to talk about the active listing,
Yes.
handling showings,
Yes.
and getting under contract. You're active.
Congratulations.
Yay! It was a lot of hard work. I
is.
can't believe how much I cleaned my house, how much stuff I decluttered. I really had to detach from the taxidermy hangs I had in my home.
Yes.
I
Right?
had to get rid of the pictures of all the ugly family members that I
My
have.
beautiful-
I only left the cute kid pictures up.
My beautiful Lynette, I'm calling you out on this. My beautiful purple walls.
Purple walls.
I
You
love
painted
you.
them.
I love you, Lynette. But thank you for painting your
Oh,
home.
Lynette painted purple
She
walls.
did originally, and they were great. Right? If you're a Ravens fan, that's a beautiful thing.
There's a home in Bethany that I can't afford it. I mean, I'm not going to fool anybody, but I would never buy it because the outside is purple. It's nice on the inside. It's
Right.
purple. Who thought purple was it? You know?
there's a couple homes around that,
Unless you're that row in Charleston, South Carolina, that's the rainbow, you know?
right? Or San Francisco,
San
the
Francisco
painted
has a-
ladies.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
And there's
they-
one in Charles Village too,
Is that right?
multicolored. Yeah, absolutely.
So the house is active. What should the sellers of the home do?
All right, so there's a couple of things right off the bat. We want you to get accustomed to doing. First is living sparse.
What does that mean?
So you've decluttered. You've got a lot of stuff maybe in storage.
Don't reclutter.
Don't reclutter. Don't bring a lot of new stuff into the house.
Oh, it's got to be tough if they have little children.
It is tough. Now, what we do with the kids, we have a conversation with the parents and the kids sometimes even right up front. And we discuss with them the toy situation.
Right.
And we say, I want you to understand, Mommy and Daddy have decided that they're going to move to a new home and you're going to have a wonderful time and it's going to be great and you're going to love it. But to do that, we need to sell this house and we need to have a little bit less stuff in the house. So what I want you to do is think about your 3 favorite toys, the ones that you want to hug at night when you go to sleep and wake up and start playing with the next day. Pick those favorite 3 toys and we'll keep them out for you and you can use them as much as you want. And the rest, we're just going to pack up for a little while,
Right.
put them in storage,
And they'll be.
and they're going to be ready for you when you get to the
They'll
next house.
forget about them and never want to play with them.
Which
again.
may be a benefit, but absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
just kidding. All right, so
But
we
anyway,
live
yes,
sparse.
living sparse and keeping it clean.
So, and again, that's another tough one when you have little children. But
Yeah.
as far as
or animals, yes.
so from my standpoint, there's cleaning the home, which can, if you hire a maid or you do it yourself, could take several hours once a week. You could do it that way, or you can just try to maintain, like vacuum every once in a while, or dust occasionally, or just do a little thing. If you did 5 or 10 minutes a day, you'd be amazed
at
how
yes.
clean the house stays.
One thing that I will mention is the key areas are the super important ones. So
Kitchens.
the kitchen and the bathrooms are key. If you can keep those, make sure when the kids are brushing their teeth, they're not spitting and spraying. What was that? Felix Unger? Was it? No. It was The Big Bang Theory.
I can't stand it either.
Sheldon had a rule, one of his house rules. You couldn't brush your teeth within a certain proximity
Oh,
of
so
the
what
mirror.
makes perfect sense to me. I should
Yep.
install it. I've cleaned plenty of bathrooms, and
Yep.
I'm like, what do you guys do? Put your face right up to the mirror? Do that? I don't understand how it gets all over that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
kind of a neat freak, so that's me. So I probably would have gotten along, as annoying as Sheldon is, I probably would have gotten along with his neat
But
rule. So keep
yeah,
it
so
clean.
the idea is keeping it clean, and that includes, if you have pets, making sure that any droppings are cleaned up from the yard.
Of course, nobody likes to step.
Nobody
A,
wants
you don't
to
want
step
somebody
in that.
stepping and pooing and then walking in your house.
Well, that's very true.
B, if they smell it when they get back in their car, they're going to have a less favorable
Opinion of your
feeling or
home.
opinion about your home.
Yes.
So keeping it clean, and it's regular basis and daily maintenance, I think, is the best way to look
Key.
at it.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
And then
So-
there's also some ongoing marketing.
Yes,
What do you mean
ongoing
by that?
marketing.
Because you've
So
listed the house.
We have, and we've done initial marketing to create the launch, but we don't stop there. We keep the marketing going, active throughout the entire listing. So until, and even after it goes under contract, until it closes, we're still marketing that home. So that's something that we want you to be aware
I would
of.
imagine that the higher priced the home is, the more specific or different it is than other homes, the more ongoing marketing.
That can be the case, right? You're going to have a smaller buyer pool, and so trying to find that particular buyer pool is a little bit tougher. We try to understand who the likely buyers are for that home and create some marketing around that. We create a buyer persona who's likely to do this, but we're not going to exclude anyone. We're going to welcome any buyer into this property that can afford to buy.
Gotcha. So your marketing efforts are working.
Yes.
Are you getting
And we're
showings?
getting
People are
showings.
requesting to see the home.
And that's the ideal situation. Yes, absolutely. Now, in the heyday, year and a half ago, we'd get 40, 50 showings in the first 2
What
days.
do people do then? They just leave the house for a while?
We often told people,
Let's go away for the weekend.
go away for the weekend.
Gotcha.
We're going to be listing the house. You're going to be out of here anyway. Just go away, and we'll take care of it.
So if it's a little less busy now, but there's still
It is,
maybe
yeah. We're
multiple
not getting-
showings. What do you give people a time frame? Look, we got some showings in your house, and there are some openings. It'd just be best if you stay away the entire time. Let's say you have
Ideally.
a showing at 11 a.m. at 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. There's no sense for them to come back in between those showings.
Right. Unless they absolutely have to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and we can work around things with parents, parents who have small children who need to have a specific bedtime, or situations with working from home. We can block out certain times
You
during
block
the
out certain
day.
times, but if somebody wants to see the house, you probably want to be a little flexible.
And
as
that's
far as
important.
allowing them to,
Right. Being flexible is super important. It is a disruptive process, right? So we just want you to be as flexible as possible. Yes, there will be times when you have to say no, and we can respect that and work with it. We'll always
you go
suggest
back and forth
another
and say,
time.
Hey, not
Yep.
if
Can't do this time, but can you come here?
There you
right?
go.
Yep. Always try to suggest something else. If you say no, suggest another
Let me
time.
ask you this question.
Yeah.
If you text the client and say somebody wants to see the home, or you call them or text them, you probably do both, right?
Yeah.
And they don't respond for hours.
Can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if the buyer wants to get in there relatively quickly, right?
Right.
Now, we can set a minimum notice time within the MLS so that you don't just roll up to the property and say, hey, I want to have a showing, and go right in.
Or sitting outside in the car.
Yeah,
Can
if
you get
it's
the heck
if it's a
out, right?
vacant home, situations like that, you can do that, right? You just roll up and request the showing, and sometimes you'll see it'll get approved immediately.
Right. So
That's called a go and show, but
it's disruptive. You want people to be flexible and responsive to the request for it.
Yes, so
There's
we
also
talk
other
about
things that
that.
these people
Well-
should do when you have other people coming into your home.
Yes.
And I'm reading the things you have listed here. There's some things you want to secure.
Yeah. So anytime you've got people coming into your home that you don't know, even if they're accompanied by another realtor, they're still people that you don't know. So any kind of dangerous items, weapons, medicine of any
they
kind.
may open your cabinet,
any kind
your
of
bathroom
valuables.
cabinet, just to see what kind of size it is.
What kind of space you have, and then
Right.
if you've got oxy in there or whatever it is, right? So you want to secure that kind of stuff. Just
Right.
take it out of the house or put it somewhere that's secure in the home that people aren't going to be able to get to. Same thing goes along with pets.
Yeah, don't put them in the backyard.
Don't put them in the backyard. Don't have them roaming free through the house. I find this happens most often. Look, I love all animals. I'm not going to say I prefer one versus the other, but I do find people with cats tend to leave the cats out more often than people with dogs. And maybe it's just because
it makes sense. Well,
cats maybe are a little less intimidating, or and dogs can do a little more damage.
They spend their if they have a kitty litter, they might spend their entire lives in the house.
Right.
So it's disruptive for them. For a dog, getting them to go, they get to go on a car ride somewhere. That could be
really great. But I will say, having pets in the house, especially roaming free, can be a real problem. It can also be a problem with people who have
an
allergies.
Allergy, immediate turn off.
I have a client who just recently settled on a home, but there were several other homes that we saw. One of the homes that we saw, we walked into, and there was a cat out in the house roaming around. She was highly allergic to cats. There was no listing information that there was going to be a cat in the home.
And he didn't have his EpiPen with him and had it.
She walked into the house, walked right out of the house, and never saw it. Now, that could have been they were strong buyers, loved the neighborhood.
Yep.
Walked away from the house immediately.
Wow.
So it can be a really big issue for the pet's safety, for the safety of the people who are viewing the home.
Just keep them out of it while you're having showings.
Yep.
I mean, you have to have, hopefully you have family or friends or places you can go. You can take the dogs and hang out for a while.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Now,
combo boxes.
Combo boxes are the just bane of my existence.
What is a combo lockbox? You mean where somebody just types in a...
Combo lockboxes, the ones that either you can spin the combination on or you punch in the combination on, and a lot of agents use them because they're convenient, but here's the problem with the combo lock boxes that a lot of agents don't even realize, and it's not necessarily the case, but it's something that they should verify with their broker. Many times an agent's insurance policy, it's called an E&O policy, or errors and omissions, will not cover them if there's something that happens to that property because they used a combo lockbox.
What type of lockbox should they use?
We at our association have the Central Lock lockboxes available. That is a digital lockbox. It's much more secure. We have then a record of everyone who accessed that
digital
lockbox.
Mean like you use your phone or something?
You use your phone. It's an app that you use to access the property. Then we know who accessed it and when. We know whether they were in there during their appointed time. We know typically around when they left. So it's much more secure for the home seller, and definitely the way that you want to go. So if you have an agent who wants to put a combo lockbox on there, if you have anything in that house worth anything,
don't do it.
Insist on a Central Lock lockbox.
Makes sense.
Okay. Not that I'm paid in any way by Central Lock, but we want that. No. We want the security.
Well, so when I've rented a lot of properties through vacation homes through VRBO, and there's ones that use a lockbox, or the front door is a keypad like that. Yeah. I'd rather have the digital one. A, you know when people are coming and going.
Yeah.
B, you can change it for every single person.
Absolutely.
Do it remotely.
Yeah.
Those ones that have the keypad in, you have to be there to change the number.
Right. So I would suggest using the agent's Central Lock box simply just because you have that record of who accessed it. You know which agents accessed it. Even if you have a keypad lock on the door, that's something that one person can give to another person, and then it just increases your risk. That the Central Lock lockbox is a much more secure method.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the reasons why the insurance can be an issue. Anyway, All right, so here's a couple of things that you don't want to do. You absolutely should not do when you're selling your house and going through showings. Don't be in the house during the showing as the seller. You need to...
Sitting there tapping.
You need to get out of the house.
Imagine somebody sitting there doing this. Can I put an offer?
Right.
The house?
Right.
How annoying.
Nobody likes that.
No.
If you're a buyer walking through the property, you want to be able to tour the property at your own pace, within the showing time frame, but at your own pace.
You want to be able to comment on it to your listing agent without fear of insulting somebody. There might be things you really like, and there might be things you absolutely hate.
Right.
Everybody has different tastes.
Right. Which as we mentioned
like this
earlier, which as we mentioned earlier was one of the reasons why you need to detach from the property when you're ready to sell it.
I also
you're
look
going
at
to
you
get
don't be in your car down the block. I mean, I can. I'm visualizing somebody sitting there in a car just waiting for people to. Yeah, that if especially if I walked in and saw somebody and wondered if that was a homeowner or not, that would bother me.
Yeah.
I really like this one. Don't use strong air fresheners.
But again, well, so
People like a nice smelling house, but
2 reasons really. Number one, there's that allergy situation that we talked about before with the pets. A lot of people are allergic to those. I had another client, very sensitive, walked in, walked right out. You want the client, you want the potential buyer to spend time.
Fresheners are toxic.
They are.
They come out. You probably shouldn't. It does make your house smell nice, but at what cost?
At what cost? Right. So we suggest not using those. It also creates a certain suspicion in the buyer's mind. What are they trying to cover up?
Have you ever heard of charcoal bamboo bags?
Yeah. Those can be very effective.
They're neutralizing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's something that
doesn't create a big odor. Right. Yep.
Well, if you cook in the house and it could smell, So actually, that's one thing. A lot of times, I guess I wonder if because of COVID maybe they're not. But for the longest time, people would bake cookies.
Yeah.
To make the kitchen smell
that can
wonderful.
be a wonderful aroma. I'm not going to stop someone if they want to bake cookies.
Bake cookies.
Yeah.
Right. But. Yeah,
although maybe if it's an open house, don't bake cookies for me because then I have to feel like I have to eat them, and I don't want to do that.
It's okay to have air fresheners out, but not using them.
Well, yeah.
Would you pull them from the bathrooms? If
I would.
Somebody has it in there, for the guests.
Clean the bathroom.
My powder room has it for guests.
I would still take it out. Just clean thoroughly, and take them out. Okay.
Just don't want anything to go in a person's head. Why is that in here? Is there
exactly
right?
Exactly. You don't want that question mark. All right. So depending on the market, what's going on today, we talked about how the median days on the market is about 14 days. In a normal market, it can take 30 or even 60 days or more sometimes to get an offer. But during that period, while it's on the market, you should be getting ongoing communications, updates from your realtor.
You might have an offer that's below market,
well, and even before you get an offer, you should be informed as to how many showings are we getting. What kind of feedback are we getting from those showings? Are we getting feedback? Now, I will say, as an industry, this is another source of frustration. It's like pulling teeth sometimes to get feedback from a showing.
Do you think the buyer's agent don't want to play their hand?
They don't. They sometimes.
Play cool. They're not going to call you up and say, my client really loved this house.
Well, it depends on the market.
What's it going to take to get it? Sometimes it does.
In the past year and a half, they were doing that a lot.
All the time.
They love it.
What do we got to do to get this
absolutely love it. What do you need? Sellers, here's a blank check. How do we make this work?
Cha-ching.
Yes. But yeah, in a normal market, it's not like that. There should be some ongoing communication, some updates letting you know what's going on. Okay. Are things being effective? Are we getting views on the marketing that we're doing? Just keeping you informed as to what's going on. If an agent is not communicating like that, you've got to wonder, well, what are they doing to promote my property? All right. So anyway.
Yeah, if you're not getting any feedback from your agent as to what's going on with the showings, what do people like, what don't they like? Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So if it sits for a little while, then we might be in a situation where we need to reevaluate and make an adjustment. And whether that adjustment is price or marketing or positioning or all of the above is a discussion that needs to take place.
Okay.
But I will say 9 times out of 10, when a property doesn't sell, it's price. Right? There is a price for every property. Whether it's, great condition or poor condition, if the property's in poor condition, you just have to price it right for the market. It will sell if it's at the right price. Okay. So then you get some offers, and that's a great feeling, right? People are interested in my property. I'm excited. That's a really exciting time for the sellers. You're going to get some offers, hopefully multiple offers. Mm-hmm. And then you might get into
If you've done your job correctly, they should, Brad.
Well, it's very often the case. It's very often the case. Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. But again, yes, be responsive. When offers are coming in, those communications are very time sensitive. We want to typically, there are some negotiating tactics that may involve taking a little bit of extra time here or there to respond to something if you want to play a certain angle or what have you. But
just like it's poker, you don't want to show your hand. You're slow playing.
Right.
The buyers.
Right.
You want them to make an offer, but you don't act like you want them to.
But you want to be responsive to your agent.
Yes,
because
I get that.
That's the thing.
100%.
You just need to be in constant communication during that phase. So
the next thing you say too is about keeping a cool head. If somebody were to, because the reason you need a cool head, if somebody offers you way over your list price, you obviously don't need to keep a cool head about that.
Well,
but
right.
if somebody. But you get overexcited, right?
You can get overexcited, then maybe
because it's not closed yet.
Right, exactly.
But where people would need to keep a cool head, in my mind, or where they might get angry, is if somebody decides to lowball an offer.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
Offer a price substantially below listing for one reason or another. Just I don't know if they're just hoping that somebody will bite, or what's the mentality behind
there can
that?
Be there are buyers out there who feel like, well, let's just throw things at the wall, see what sticks. I can get if they say yes, I'm not hurt. But I can tell you, sometimes, depending on the market, that strategy may not be the best market.
Not if you're the buyer, not in this market, but if
not in this market, right?
But if somebody does, you keep the cool head. There's something you should do instead of just rejecting it flat out. What should you do?
Always counter. Right. Never just reject an offer outright. Always make a counter offer. Even if you're countering at list price, or if you want to send a real message, counter it above list price if you really want to. Yeah. But counter the offer.
Just don't dismiss it outright.
Because you may have someone, they were playing that card, but they may have ample means to purchase the property at whatever price you want. It is a negotiation.
They started it. You have to counter.
Absolutely. So keep that cool head and always counter.
The other thing, this one, especially from my standpoint, and especially when people have to, and we're not going to talk about this, but when they have a house to sell and to buy a new home.
Yeah.
They worry. I could see them focus on the price, but that's not what they should focus on. They should focus on the net. What do you mean, net?
So the net is what you're going to walk away with from the sale of the home after all of your seller credits, maybe, and closing costs and everything.
Your share of the transfer and recordation taxes and what you have to pay the agents.
Right. What is that net amount that you will walk away with?
And anything you spend fixing the house up or doing repairs.
Correct. That's the number you need to focus on. So if somebody offers you a higher number but then asks for seller help, you're not getting that higher number. You're getting the net of that number minus the seller help minus all your other costs.
And in a market that we have now with people stretching their budgets to qualify for a home, having not using every bit of your assets to buy a home can be helped by some seller credits. And you're right. Instead of, if somebody were to offer a house for I'll give you $500,000, but I need $10,000 in seller help. Well, that's better than just not getting any seller help and selling to somebody for $485,000.
That's right. Right. Absolutely. So worry about the net. The other thing is just weighing all the aspects of that offer, because there may be certain things in that offer that are more important to you, the intangibles. We talk about that on the buyer side too. Finding out what's important to the seller. Well, you may have certain things that are more important to you. If you have a lot of young children, maybe you've got a date that you don't want them to be out of school before, so you need a little bit of time.
More time, or maybe a rent back, and there's other situations where you're halfway moved out of the house, and if they could close quick, great. That would really entice me.
Absolutely. So there's relative strengths of the offer. The other thing to keep in mind is that sellers often perceive those different types of offers different ways. So cash, there's this phrase, cash is king.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a cash offer, that can be great. You don't necessarily, no offense, Michael, or any other lenders out there, but you don't have to worry about. They'll need me at some
point. They might not need me for this transaction.
Right, but absolutely, good point. But you don't have to worry about a loan getting, qualification for the loan or the appraisal typically in a cash offer unless they do a cash appraisal. But cash is king, so that tends to carry the day a lot, but it's also not necessarily the only deciding factor. And if
somebody can offer more and have lending, and there are financing options. that in today's world of mortgage lending, because of electronic verifications, somebody has an offer that they're putting a large down payment down. They do need a loan, but they verified their income, employment, and assets, and an appraisal waiver has been granted. The only thing that's needed is title. Yeah. That's almost as that I would say
that's almost as strong as a cash offer.
And a cash offer, and if they're offering a little bit more than that cash offer, then I would think that would trump it.
Now, I will give sellers a piece of advice, and it applies to buyers too, but there are some loan types. They're called CDA loans.
Maryland Mortgage Program, closing down payment assistance programs.
Right. So they're great vehicles for people who need some help getting into the home. However, they take sometimes, yes, they take a little bit longer to close. And sometimes agents or even their lenders will try to sell you on the fact, oh, we can close in 30 days. Don't believe it. Because it's not the lender.
I think it's not the lender. Probably take a little bit longer.
It's the third party that's involved that takes longer. It's a government agency.
You can be done everything you have to do with a down payment assistant or a Maryland Mortgage Program loan or any kind of, we call them bond programs, where a government agency is helping the buyer get into the home one way or another. They can take longer. You can done all your work and be done, and then just sitting here waiting, twiddling your thumbs and toes.
I've never had one close in 30 days.
Yeah, well, it's generally not going to happen. Yeah. You'd have to be done like my part in 3 days and give them 27.
Right. All right. Now, another point.
Yes.
Buyer love letters.
We talked about that, and that used to be a big thing because people would always try to tug at the heartstrings, especially if they're a similar family. The people selling the home have emotional attachment, even though you said detach to the home, and they raise their kids in it, and then an incoming family may want to raise their kids.
Oh, it might be so nice to have another family.
There's a problem with that.
There is a big problem with that.
What is it?
It's fair housing.
What do you mean, fair housing?
Fair housing is a law, the law of the land. It was passed, the original fair housing law was passed in 1968. Protecting certain classes of individuals, familial status, religion, color, creed.
And you don't even have to try. And it's one of those things where it's not even it's called disparate impact, meaning if protected class is impacted, even though it wasn't your intention, there was no intent on your part to discriminate, you've had a violation of the fair housing laws.
Yep. So, to that point, one of the things that we talk about in the listing agreement, also in the buyer agreement, is that we will not accept buyer love letters. If agents or their buyers...
By virtue of you accepting a letter and accepting a contract as somebody who said they'd love to raise their kids in it, you may have discriminated against a single... or somebody without kids, or a single
familial
parent,
status is it's a protected class. Source of income is another protected class. So sexual orientation. So there's federal classes. There's also state and even local, depending on the county that you're in.
You don't need a love letter. They wouldn't be putting an offer in if they didn't love the house.
Right. So the offer needs to stand on its own. We're not dealing with buyer love letters. All right. So anyway, once all that's done, you go through all the offers. Again, hopefully you've gotten multiple offers. It's a lot to wade through, but we'll wade through it with you and explain everything, all the ins and outs of all the different aspects of the offer, the closing date, who's the lender, did that lender call me, or, are we? Michael always does a great job of calling the listing agent whenever I have a buyer.
Not only do that, but I also follow up throughout the process.
Yes, but keeping that communication going, it's so helpful.
Right.
It's so helpful. But anyway, you've done all that. You go through all that, the ins and outs of every offer. You decide on one. Maybe you counter. Maybe you've accept the offer. Maybe you've gone back and forth a few times. But eventually,
you're going to sign a contract.
Reach agreement, and you sign the contract. Now, that covers everything we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, because I had a feeling you were going to start talking about things that could be in the contract, but that's a lot to talk about, and we don't have time on this week.
We do not.
We'll do that next week. Coming up,
yes,
per our weekly, we have the unreal, something that's strange or out of the ordinary happened,
crazy
in our real estate market or markets, and we're also going to do the spotlight where we highlight a local eatery. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a few minutes.
Try it.
Welcome back to Be Real, the Maryland Real Estate Podcast. I'm Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long and Foster, joined by
Michael Becker of Sierra Pacific Mortgage.
So, Michael, we've talked quite a bit about the first half of the home selling process.
Basically getting the listing, getting the home listed, and dealing with showings and offers and getting your home
under contract. Now,
the
next
contract
week.
to close
Coming next week.
is coming next week.
Right.
Brad, you have somebody or some place to spotlight?
We're going to, yes. So, in keeping with our food theme that we've started, we're not necessarily always going to do food, but we're going to talk about.
No, I think we should. I love food.
Well, I love food too. Yeah.
Well, even if it's a drinking place, you're going to get something to eat there.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, this week we're highlighting Neopole Smokery in the Belvedere Square. That's at 529 East Belvedere Avenue. Their smokery, they have all sorts of sandwiches, turkey, andouille sausage, salads and things too. But there's one sandwich there that is, for me, the pièce de résistance.
Sounds good to me.
It is amazing. The smoked salmon BLT. And it's a lot lighter than some of their other sandwiches, still very satisfying. The flavor, the smoked salmon.
The combination, smoked salmon and bacon, lettuce, tomatoes.
So
delicious.
So good.
Do they smoke their own salmon as well as turkey and
Mm-hmm.
sausage and all that other stuff?
Yes. So, and just super tasty. So, if you get a chance, swing by Neopole Smokery and check them out. You won't regret it. You can also follow them on social. On Instagram, they are at Neopole Smokery. Neopole is N as in Nancy, E as in Edward, O as in Oscar, P as in Paul, O as in Oscar, L as in Larry. And Smokery, Neopole Smokery, at Neopole Smokery. But follow them, check them out on Instagram, share the love, spread the word.
Check it out.
They're great. Absolutely. Well, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Been another great episode. Thank you, as always.
No predictions for the Super Bowl.
No.
But we'll have to start predicting where the Maryland Terrapins might rank in the NCAA tournament. They had a very big win the other day.
They did.
They beat number 3 Purdue. It was the first time in I think about 10 years that they beat a top 5 ranked team.
Yeah.
They're starting to play much better. They struggled in the middle part of their season with offense. They'd fall behind early and have a hard time catching up. They're looking a lot better these days. So maybe in a future show we'll rank them.
Sure.
We'll predict where they'll be ranked in the NCAA. Right now, bracketology
I'll just Nate Silver it.
They have them around an 8 seed, but I think after Purdue they might move up. You don't want to be, if you want to go far in the NCAA tournament, you don't want to be an 8 seed or 9 seed, because guess who? If you win that first game, your next game is against the number 1 seed, so that's always a toughie.
It is.
Anyway, maybe we'll talk about that. But
all right, so on our next episode, we're talking about the second part of the home selling process, from contract to close. Folks, if you want to check us out on the web, you can find us at www.berealpod.com. You can listen right on the site. Also submit comments or feedback. We'd love to have some feedback. Let us know what you like. Tell us what you want us to talk about, how you think we're doing. You can also listen to us on all the major podcast platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podbeam. Pretty much everywhere. So, Michael,
yes,
somebody needs to reach you to talk about mortgages. How do they get in touch?
Always call me. My cell number is 443-310-0012. Again, it's 443-310-0012. Email works, michael.becker@spmc.com. If you have trouble emailing me, you can always find me on the web. Just Google Sierra Pacific Mortgage and type in my name or search for a branch. You could find me that way. We have a great website. It'll even allow you to apply online if you want to do so.
Great.
SierraPacificMortgage.com.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if you need to get in touch with me to talk about your real estate plans, just give us a call. My number is 410-375-7550. Again, 410-375-7550. Or you can email me at brad@homesbyvesta.com. HOMESBY, V as in Victor, ESTA. homesbyvesta.com.
Homesbyvesta.com.
Homesbyvesta.com. And folks, really appreciate you listening. We'll be back to talk to you in the next episode of Be Real, the Maryland Real Estate Podcast.
See ya.
Try it.